All right, are you ready to dive into this?
Mm-hmm.
Week 3. Okay, here we go.
Hold on.
Oh, you can't figure out what to do with your hands?
Speaking of week one body, I never know what to do with my body.
I don't know what to do with my hands.
Okay.
Okay. Don't do that. That's not it. If you're wondering. Oh, no. Okay. Here we go.
Ready.
Okay. Serious face. Okay. We're in week 3 of Advent, and we're asking a big question. What does it mean for God, the creator of the universe, the one who makes the stars, the giver of life, to be born, specifically to choose to be born as a tiny little infant, as a vulnerable human? We've been talking about the power of incarnation. What about the power and the might of vulnerability? I'm Becca. I'm the pastor of family ministries here at Katy First.
And I'm Mark. I'm the senior pastor here at Katy First.
Welcome to Katy First Family Podcast, where we offer ideas, inspiration, and encouragement to help your family grow faithfully and joyfully as disciples of Jesus Christ. This week, we're talking about the duality of our great, big, mighty God, born as a tiny, needy, little 8 pound,
You can't not think
it's
of
there.
Ricky Bobby.
You got to do it. I'm excited about this week. So you trailer teased this week last week. Mm-hmm. And so I have to confess that I read ahead.
You looked ahead. Yeah.
I read all of the quotes because you quoted. I'm still going through it day by day.
Yeah.
But I cheated. I spoilered it.
It's okay.
Yeah. And I'm really excited to talk about this because I think it's really interesting.
Yeah.
And I think it's a really interesting thing for families, for people who are in the middle, especially right now, of raising tiny humans.
Yes.
I think it hits in a different way.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about what we talked about in worship this past Sunday.
Yeah. And I love this topic because, last week was sort of seeing the particular location, and we talked about locality and why that's important. But this week is about our humanity, and there's so many different directions to go with this. Kind of as we were just talking about earlier, you can really apply this in a lot of different ways. But really, the bottom line, at least for this week, the way that I took it is really, and I'm gonna give a plug for Scott Erickson, Honest Advent, which
it's a great one.
Honestly, there's 3 quotes in here from Honest Advent that come from Scott's book. He's an artist, one of my favorite. There's a lot of stuff on Instagram, so check out Scott Erickson. Check out Honest Advent because there's a lot of good stuff in it. But
sure. He
talks about this scripture that we looked at that we all often hear at Christmas. That comes from Isaiah. I'll read bits of it. I won't read all of it, but the part that we all kind of hear often, I think it's in Charlie Brown Christmas, maybe that's the reason we hear it, is, "For a child has been born for us, a son given to us, authority rests upon his shoulders. He is named Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Great will his authority be, and there shall be endless peace for the throne of David and his kingdom." And so, we with a prophecy like this, we think of might, strength, power, authority, all these you kind of put in a word map of an image of someone who is, capable, who's able to not be, brought down by the hardship of life, but is stronger than it and is going to make us all better. And what Scott says so beautifully, which is really where the sermon went, was that God is not mighty because of a capacity to overcome hardship, but because of a willingness to go through it just like we do.
Yeah.
And that is really the definition of vulnerability, the willingness to enter into the hardship, the risk, the uncertainty, the emotional exposure. And so when God becomes human, it transforms this idea of God's might from dude who can bench press the universe to someone who enters into our world as we are. There's a text in Hebrew that talks about one of the reasons we can come so confidently before God is because God has experienced all the things we have, knows what it is to be in our skin, knows what it is to be needy. And, God didn't come to us fully formed, came to us as a baby. Mm-hmm. And so there's just so many things about how this, I think, applies, whether it's us looking at our own bodies and our different abled bodies, our different aged bodies, our different sized bodies, and seeing them as good and lovely because God's human and God's in flesh with us, or whether it's seeing the ways in which we can so easily dehumanize ourselves or others, and how unholy that is because God has been made human, Word's been made flesh, and God came to show us what our true humanity is, and therefore we have to always fight for that, for ourselves and for others. And so there's just so many ways really this could go. But I think it's really embracing that idea that at Christmas we learn the message, the might of God is also intricately tied to the vulnerability of God, even we might say the weakness of God. Sometimes we don't like that word, but the weakness of God. Therefore, we lean into our vulnerabilities, our weaknesses, our inabilities, because maybe it is even precisely that's where God is at to redeem, restore, heal us. So we could talk about that all day. But
I think it's that choice, right? Yeah. The creator of the universe doesn't have to choose to do it this way. So there has to be a significant reason why, right? Like it's not an accident. Right. It's like, well, this is my only option. Like that's not how that works. Yeah. So it does say something very specific about who God is and what that means for who we are as God's people. Yeah. And I think that's really powerful. I think that's powerful for everybody always. I do want to ask you, and this is, you have to tell the truth. And
love telling the truth.
Okay, good. I'm glad to hear
that. That sounded so like sketchy.
It's my favorite.
I love to tell the truth.
So did you decide to do vulnerability this close, like the third week of Advent, because you knew we would all be tired, overexhausted, like overworked, overscheduled. We'd all probably be sick. Like, I mean, obviously my voice is not the best. No,
that is purely a Bob Ross happy accident.
It's a happy little
Or I guess we could say divine intervention, whatever it is. I didn't plan it that way, but that is, we're all sort of exhausted by this point.
Yeah, because we're so close, I think, to Christmas that it's like, it's starting to feel maybe like a lot for people.
That's true.
We have advented quite hard. Yeah. Or maybe not, maybe that's not true. Maybe we haven't advented well enough. We've Christmased into our Advent a little too much. Yeah. And so this is a great time to kind of take a deep breath and to celebrate the places where we kind of get cracked open as places where God can rush in. That vulnerability can be a gift. Yeah. I think it's really interesting to talk about this with people who are raising tiny humans, whether they're still tiny or not. Yeah. Because whether you have a 2-year-old or a 16-year-old, I think these are really beautiful conversations. Or connections, because my 2-year-old, we're not having beautiful conversations. I don't know. But, like really beautiful connections of seeing some of the ways that being vulnerable can be a strength, and seeing the holy in those really things that could be thought of as weak moments. Yep. And, sometimes I think the language that we use when we talk about people, and I do think especially parenting or around kids, can be really, I think, hurtful and I think maybe making ourselves aware of it, because I don't think we do it on purpose. Right. But when Samuel was little, just to make it personal, people would be like, oh, he's such a good baby, because he was pretty easy on us for the most part. We had a really unfortunate sleep regression situation at 6 months. And no one was calling him a good baby then, right? But for the most part, he's pretty easy on us. Yeah. And so people would say that he was good. And he is good. But if he needed more attention in the middle of the night, or he was having really big feelings and having meltdowns, that doesn't make him a bad kid. Yeah. And sometimes that's the language that we use. Yeah. Or we talk about parenting culture as I got to have my glass of wine by 5 p.m. if I'm going to make it to the end of the day. And I mean, I know that's mostly a joke, right? We're being silly, and that's totally fine. But I think, sometimes bringing our awareness to like the way that that people aren't inherently bad.
Yeah, a lot of just like deficit language becomes natural.
Yeah, I mean, 9 times out of 10, whether somebody is like 6 months old, 16 years old, or 60 years old, they're not trying to give you a hard time. They are having a hard time.
Yeah.
And that, for me, no matter who I'm dealing with, is a massive like mind reset, so that I can enter into that moment with more kindness and patience than I might feel otherwise if I feel like I'm being attacked or put upon.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think when we think about like God choosing, I mean, I have to imagine that even perfect, Jesus had tantrums and meltdowns.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's developmentally appropriate.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And so somehow that becomes also holy.
Yeah.
And that to me blows my mind.
Right.
Or like, we know he sassed his mom when he's 12, right? And he goes off to the temple and stuff. That's one of my favorite passages, because it doesn't say what Mary says to him, just that he never does it again.
Yeah, right.
Like I love it.
Puts him in his place.
Right. Like, so, he still is developmentally appropriate, even as an adolescent. And he gets hangry, right? And like curses a fig tree as an adult. Like, I mean, there's more to it, right?
Yeah.
I'm simplifying it.
Yeah.
But I think that it's interesting to think about, the creator of the universe having stinky breath in the morning, or having achy feet at the end of the day. Yeah. And the way that God's presence in those places, right, in those very human moments, does bless them in a way that allows us to celebrate our own humanity, recognizing the way that God has shown up and continues to in a different way.
Yeah.
And I think that's really powerful.
Yeah.
And I think too, like when we are trying to talk about, okay, so then how do we do this with our families, right? Like we want to lean into this, a practice with our family. I think it's good to do something, I'm going to use a fancy word, embodied, right? It's not something we just normally say. Embodied. But like at our house, we do dance parties every night, right? To get some of those wiggles out. Right? A lot of spinning lately. We've been doing a lot of spinning. Yeah. I think also like a family walk, you don't have to talk. That's not the point. It's just the point is to move from being people that are just here in our heads to being in our bodies. Yeah. Bake something together, eat something together, do something, big or small that requires, your hands or, some physical effort. Yeah. Make it a fun part of your daily routine. It doesn't have to be this extra big thing, because nobody has time for an extra big thing right now, right? Like we do not. Yeah. But I think that can help us to really lean into this idea of incarnation and the vulnerability of our bodies. I mean, honestly, family nap time.
Ooh,
I mean, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I'm saying. And then you could be like, well, you know, Jesus said I should. Pastor Becca, Pastor Mark said we should. We should nap. Yeah. And we do. We co-sign that.
Yeah. I was just, this isn't in here, but another thing I was thinking about is like showing off your scars.
Oh, yeah.
Like someone was asking me, I have a scar on my finger.
Okay.
Thanks to my older sister.
Oh, no.
Who probably isn't listening to this, but if she is, she slammed my finger into the car door. Oh, no. So I now have this long scar.
That's pretty serious to have that kind of scar.
I know. It was brutal.
How old were you?
I don't know.
Oh, you've like trauma blocked it.
No, but it's actually like we all have scars.
Sure.
They all have a story. And so we have like just talking about your body, but insane. And it's good. It's part of me. Like, things that are signs of previous wounds or whatever can also be stories of redemption. Like that's one of like showing your body. Like that could be another way.
Yeah.
Have a scar contest. Who's got the coolest scar?
Yeah. With like the best story.
With the best story.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I think that makes sense. I think celebrating our perceived weaknesses and definitely our vulnerability with our family is actually a really empowering thing for everybody. For not just for the people that you're, like, oh, look at me, but for you too, right? Like I think it goes, nobody's losing there. Yeah. And I think that that's a really often missed thing. And we don't want it to slide into that area where it's not, like age level appropriate, or it's, burdening kids too much. That's not what we're saying.
Yeah.
But in ways that are developmentally appropriate, depending on the age of your family, to lean into the way that God shows up embodied means something particularly beautiful about bodies. Yeah. Well, you want to tease what we're going to be talking about next week?
Yeah. So next week, I hope to put a nice bow on this. We'll see. It's probably really impossible, but the kind of dichotomy is particular and universal. And what I'm going to try to do is talk about the very particularity, which we sort of have in different ways, of Jesus, like literally being a first century male rabbi, like these very specific things, like, hey, if God became human and was a man, a Jewish man, a man in the first century world, what does that mean to me? Or what's it mean to me if I'm a female? Like, is there and that's what this Walter Brueggemann calls a scandal particularity. Like, it's almost scandalous that God got too specific. But I think there is kind of a both and of that particularity being very important in telling us something, and then also how that somehow opens up the door to what Scripture also calls the new humanity, which is more of kind of a universal truth of how Christ came to show us the way to be truly human. And so I'm going to try to get as specific as possible, and then see if we can't just almost universalize it, but we'll see. Maybe impossible.
No, you're going to do great.
Christmas is,
it's exciting. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
This has been a really exciting series.
Yeah.
I can't believe that next week is already fourth Sunday of Advent and Christmas Eve.
I know.
Unacceptable. That went like that.
Fast. And then it's the future of 2024.
I'm not sure your math is right. I don't think that's correct. I'm pretty sure that's not right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we are so glad you joined us today, and we hope that you and your family will lean into different ways to experience the goodness of God right in your own bodies and right in your own family. We'll be praying for you and for your family, and we can't wait to see you in worship on Sunday. Have a great week.